The Doctor, Julius Erving's Flight to Immortality. February 22, 1980. 19,812 fans packed into the Spectrum in Philadelphia. Lakers forward Jim Chones positioned himself to stop the baseline drive, confident he'd seen every move in his 9 NBA seasons. "He's going baseline," Chones muttered. "No angle, he's got nothing." What Chones didn't know was that he was about to witness a moment that would define basketball's impossible. Julius Winfield Erving II, known as Dr. J, was about to perform surgery on the laws of physics. The ball left his hand from behind the backboard, scooped upward in a motion that defied every coaching manual. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar could only watch as the ball kissed the glass and dropped through. The Spectrum erupted. Chones stood frozen, mouth open. On the Lakers bench, rookie Magic Johnson jumped to his feet, applauding the man who just scored against his team. Years later, Magic would say, "That was the moment I knew I was watching something beyond basketball. That was impossible. That was Doc." But this story isn't about one shot. It's about how a boy from a Long Island housing project transformed basketball from a ground game into aerial assault. How poverty and pain forged the most graceful athlete his sport had ever seen. And how Julius Erving didn't just change how basketball was played. He changed what players believed was possible. Roosevelt, New York, 1951-968. February 22, 1950. Roosevelt, New York. A segregated suburban town where black families lived on one side of the tracks, whites on the other. Julius Winfield Erving Jr. and his wife Callie welcomed their second son into a world that promised nothing. The Campbell Park housing projects weren't the worst place a black child could grow up in 1950s America, but they weren't far from it. Julius Erving II, called June by his family, shared a 2-bedroom apartment with his parents, older brother Marvin and younger sister Alexis. The first tragedy struck in 1954. Julius's father simply left. No explanation, just an empty chair that would never be filled. Callie Erving, 31 with 3 children and no husband, took a second job. She stretched every dollar, made sure her children had clean clothes and hot food, and taught them that education was the only ladder out. The second tragedy came in 1965. Marvin died suddenly at 16 from an undiagnosed autoimmune disease. Julius was 15. The grief hit like a physical blow. He stopped talking for weeks, stopped eating regularly. His grades slipped. Callie, drowning in her own sorrow while working 2 jobs, sat on his bed one night. "Marvin would want you to be great, not good, great. You owe him that, you owe me that, but mostly you owe yourself that." Julius returned to the basketball court at Campbell Park with something new burning inside him. Not just love of the game, but a desperate need to become something more than his circumstances. To escape not by running, but by flying. The laboratory. The outdoor court at Campbell Park was Julius Erving's laboratory. Cracked concrete, chain-link nets, a warped backboard. Here, one of basketball's most revolutionary styles was born. Julius was 63 by sophomore year, but he didn't play like a big man. Something about his body, the way his joints connected, the length of his fingers, the spring in his legs, allowed movements others couldn't replicate. He could palm a basketball like an orange, grip it one-handed and manipulate it midair. Ray Wilson, his coach at Roosevelt High School, saw something he'd never encountered in 30 years. Most kids, you teach them footwork and shooting form. Julius already had his own style. My job wasn't to teach him basketball. It was to make sure he didn't waste the gift. At Salvation Mountain High School, where Julius transferred senior year on scholarship, Coach Ted Gustafson recognized something beyond talent. First practice, Julius went up for a rebound, got the ball and just stayed up there, hung in the air, looked around, then finished with his offhand. The other kids stopped and stared. I thought, this kid doesn't play basketball the same way humans do. Julius averaged 26 points and 21 rebounds senior year, but statistics couldn't capture what was happening. He was inventing a vocabulary of movement that didn't exist in basketball's dictionary. The University of Massachusetts offered a scholarship. Not a powerhouse, but it was Division I. It was a full ride. It was a chance. Callie cried when Julius signed. "You're going to be the first person in our family to go to college. Basketball got you there, but education is going to set you free." Julius promised he'd graduate, a promise that would haunt him for 40 years. UMass 1960, 81971. September 1968. Julius arrived at UMass with 2 suitcases, a basketball, and no idea he was about to change college basketball forever. Freshmen couldn't play varsity in 1968. Julius dominated the freshman team so completely that varsity players snuck into practices just to watch. In one game, he scored 36 points and grabbed 32 rebounds. December 6, 1969. Varsity debut. Providence College ranked 12 featuring All-American Jimmy Walker. Final score, UMass 85, Providence 84. Julius, 27 points, 20 rebounds, 5 blocks. Providence coach Dave Gavitt stood in the hallway afterward processing what he'd witnessed. "We game planned for everything. Nothing worked. He'd go up for a shot, we'd contest it, and he'd just adjust midair. That kid is going to revolutionize basketball." Over 2 varsity seasons, Julius averaged 26.9 points and 20.2 rebounds. But more importantly, he was drawing crowds UMass had never seen. Students who'd never cared about basketball lined up hours before games. In a game against Boston College, Julius took off from just inside the free throw line and dunked. The crowd fell silent, then erupted. Even the referees stopped to stare. Nobody had seen a human being do the things Julius was doing, teammate Al Skinner later said. He'd get a rebound and go coast to coast, and somewhere along the way, he'd leave the ground in one part of the court and land in another. But Julius's college career was about to be cut short. The ABA gamble, 1970, 11973. Spring 1971. Julius faced the most important decision of his young life. 1 year of eligibility remained, but Callie was sick. The family needed money. The NBA wouldn't draft underclassmen, but the American Basketball Association would. "Go," Callie told him. "Take care of your family. The degree will always be there." The Virginia Squires offered a 4-year contract worth $500,000. Julius signed on August 30th, 1971. His debut came October 15th against the Carolina Cougars. Julius scored 21 points, grabbed 19 rebounds, and during warm-ups performed a free throw line dunk that had players from both teams stopping to watch. ABA Commissioner Jack Dolph whispered to a reporter, "That kid just saved this league." George Gervin faced him for the first time in November. "I thought I knew how to score. Then I watched Doc go baseline, take off from what looked like Virginia Beach and finish over 2 7-footers. I told my teammates, we're playing a different game than that man." The nickname Dr. J had originated at UMass, but it was in the ABA that it became legend. Fans chanted "Doctor, Doctor." Opponents stopped playing to watch his warm-up dunks. In 1972, Julius led the Squires to the ABA Finals. He averaged 31.9 points in the playoffs and won the league's MVP award. But Virginia was financially drowning. After the 1973 season, they sold his contract to the New York Nets for $1 million. It was the best investment the Nets ever made. The New York Phenomenon, 1970-31976. The Nets played on Long Island, miles from the Roosevelt projects where Julius grew up. For the kid who dreamed of escaping poverty, it was a homecoming as a conquering hero. Coach Kevin Luffery made a revolutionary decision: build the entire offense around letting Julius create. I'd studied all the great systems. Then I watched Julius and realized all that coaching theory was useless. You don't coach Michelangelo on how to paint. The 1973-74 season was a revelation. Julius averaged 27.4 points, 10.7 rebounds, 5.2 assists, 2.4 steals, and 1.8 blocks. He won the ABA MVP, but more importantly, he was packing arenas. When the Nets came to town, fans showed up, not to watch a game, but to watch Julius do things they'd only heard about. The 1974 Finals, Nets over Utah 4-1. Julius averaged 27.9 points, 11.5 rebounds. The 24-year-old had made the ABA matter. The 1975-76 season would cement his legend and mark the ABA's final year. Julius averaged 29.3 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 1.9 blocks. In the finals against Denver, he averaged 37.7 points and 14.2 rebounds. In the clinching Game 6, he scored 31 with 19 rebounds. After the game, Julius stood at center court of the Nassau Coliseum, barely a dozen miles from the projects, holding the trophy and crying. Callie sat in the stands crying too. But the ABA was dying. 4 teams would join the NBA for 1976-77. The Nets couldn't afford the entry fee. They sold Julius Erving. Philadelphia, the almost perfect years, 1976-1983. October 1976. The Philadelphia 76ers purchased Julius's contract for $3 million, the largest transaction in basketball history. But NBA purists believed the ABA had been inferior. The whispers followed him. Let's see how Dr. J does against real basketball players. The doubts lasted one game. October 22, 1976. Opening night. Julius scored 28 points with 12 rebounds, performing the same aerial artistry that made him an ABA legend. A third-quarter dunk, baseline, takeoff from outside the lane, switched hands midair, finished over 2 defenders, made the spectrum explode. That night everyone learned the truth, recalled Doug Collins. The ABA hadn't been inferior. We'd just never seen anyone like Doc. He was showing the NBA a new way to play. But Philadelphia didn't win the championship, lost in the finals to Portland. The pattern would define Julius's NBA career: individual brilliance, team success, but no championship. The criticism mounted. Was Julius too unselfish? Did his style work for team success? Then came the 1980-81 season, and that impossible shot. We returned to where we began. February 22, 1980. Julius on the right baseline, 3 Lakers converging. The coaching manual said give up the ball. Physics said there was no shot. Julius went up anyway. He took off from the right side, moving laterally along the baseline while airborne. Behind the backboard now, still floating, he scooped the ball up and over. It kissed the glass from behind and dropped through. He'd been in the air for 1.4 seconds, an eternity. The spectrum erupted. Lakers coach Paul Westhead said years later, that was the moment when everyone realized we weren't just watching an athlete, we were watching an artist. But beautiful highlights don't win championships. Moses and Redemption, 1982-1983. Summer 1982. The Sixers acquired Moses Malone from Houston. Malone was the reigning MVP, providing the interior dominance Philadelphia had lacked. The regular season was dominant, 65-17, best record in the NBA. But everyone remembered previous disappointments. Before the playoffs, a reporter asked Moses how many games it would take to win the championship. Moses's response became legendary: 4-4-4. The prediction seemed absurd, but Moses wasn't joking. Sixers swept the Knicks 4-0, beat Milwaukee 4-1, swept defending champion Boston 4-0. The Spectrum chanted "Beat LA" before the series ended. The 1983 Finals, Sixers vs. Lakers. Philadelphia won Game 1 in Los Angeles, 113-107. Won Game 2. Won Game 3 at home, 111-94. Game 4, May 31, 1983. The Spectrum was rocking. Julius, criticized for years for not winning the big one, was 33 and about to achieve what had eluded him. Final score: Philadelphia 115, Los Angeles 108. When the buzzer sounded, Julius stood at center court holding the trophy he'd chased for 7 years. He climbed into the stands in his uniform and hugged Cali while fans cheered. "For my mother," Julius told reporters, barely able to speak, "everything I've done has been for her. This championship is hers as much as mine." Moses was named Finals MVP, but Julius had averaged 19 points, 6.8 rebounds, 4.5 assists while playing lockdown perimeter defense. He'd finally answered the critics. The parade drew 1.8 million people. Julius, holding the trophy, thought about the journey. From the projects to UMass to the ABA to the NBA to this moment, 13 professional seasons to reach the summit. The Twilight, 1984-1987. The next 3 seasons followed a pattern. Julius remained an all-star, still capable of spectacular plays, but the explosive athleticism was fading. Dunks came less frequently. Impossible shots became merely difficult. But Julius's evolution showed another dimension. As athletic gifts diminished, basketball intelligence increased. He became a better passer, smarter defender, more efficient scorer. "Young Doc played like a comet," said teammate Andrew Toney. "Older Doc played like a surgeon. Couldn't fly over people anymore, so he went around them. Smarter basketball, even if it wasn't as flashy." The 1986-87 season would be Julius's last. At 36, playing his 16th professional season, he knew the end was near. His final regular season game came April 19, 1987, against Indiana. Fitting that it would be against an ABA franchise. Julius scored 24 points, grabbed 8 rebounds, and received a standing ovation that lasted minutes. His final game was a playoff loss on May 3, 1987. He scored 18 points, grabbed 5 rebounds, and walked off as one of basketball's immortals. 16-year career, 30,026 total points, 10,525 rebounds, 5,176 assists, 5 MVP awards, 11 All-Star selections, 1 NBA championship. But the numbers couldn't capture his real impact. Life after basketball. Retirement came quietly in summer 1987. Julius thought it would bring peace. He was wrong. The next decades would test him in ways basketball never had. Julius formed Erving Industries, investing in Coca-Cola bottling, car dealerships, real estate. For a time, it worked brilliantly. By the mid-1990s, his ventures generated millions annually. "I approached business the same way I approached basketball," Julius explained. "Study the fundamentals, work harder than your competition, execute the plan." But basketball success doesn't always translate to business success. The 2008 financial crisis destroyed his real estate holdings. His bottling operation drowned in debt. His dealerships hemorrhaged money. On May 15, 2009, Julius filed for bankruptcy. The filing listed $20.8 million in debts against $8.2 million in assets. The media coverage was brutal. Financial experts used him as a cautionary tale, but Julius faced the failure with dignity. "I made decisions that didn't work out. These are my mistakes and I own them, but they don't define me any more than that shot against the Lakers defined me." The bankruptcy was resolved within 2 years, but it taught him something. Your value as a person isn't determined by your bank account. It's determined by how you respond when everything falls apart. the unbreakable tragedy. But business failures couldn't compare to what struck on May 27, 2000. Corey Erving, Julius's 19-year-old son, had gone missing 2 weeks earlier. When police divers recovered his car from a retention pond in Florida, Corey was inside. The medical examiner ruled it an accident. He'd lost control, crashed through a guardrail, drowned when the car sank. Julius Erving, who'd faced down the greatest athletes without flinching, who defied physics itself, was powerless to save his own son. At the funeral on June 3rd, Julius delivered a eulogy that left hundreds in tears. Corey was my baby boy. He had his mother's smile and his father's love of competition. He wanted to be an artist, a musician. He had his whole life ahead of him, and now he's gone and I can't. Julius couldn't finish. He stood sobbing uncontrollably. His oldest son guided him back to his seat. "You never get over losing a child," Julius said years later. "You learn to live with it. You find ways to honor their memory, but the pain never goes away." Julius and his wife Turquoise established the Corey Erving Fund, providing scholarships to young artists, a way to keep Corey's memory alive. But Corey's death revealed another painful truth Julius had hidden for decades. The secret daughter. In 2008, another bombshell hit. Alexandra Stevenson, a professional tennis player who'd reached the 1999 Wimbledon semifinals, publicly revealed that Julius was her biological father. In 1980, at the height of his NBA career, Julius had an affair with Samantha Stevenson, a sports writer. The relationship resulted in Alexandra's birth in December 1980. Julius provided financial support but kept her existence secret from the public and much of his own family. In 2008, Alexandra decided she was tired of living a secret. She wanted to acknowledge her father publicly. The revelation devastated Julius's family. Turquoise was reportedly crushed. Their children struggled to process the news of a half-sister they'd never met. Julius released a brief statement. "Alexandra is my daughter and I love her. The circumstances involve mistakes I made decades ago. I apologize to everyone affected, especially to my wife and children." Julius's carefully cultivated image took a serious hit. Sponsors ended relationships. Speaking engagements dried up. The man who'd been a role model was suddenly seen as flawed human. But something unexpected happened. Julius and Alexandra began building a real relationship. They met regularly. He attended her tennis matches. She visited him in Philadelphia. "I can't change the past," Julius said in 2010. "I can't undo the hurt I caused, but I can try to be a better father going forward. That's all any of us can do, admit our mistakes and try to do better." The promise fulfilled. In 2010, amid bankruptcy and family scandal, Julius did something that brought him more satisfaction than any dunk or championship. He went back to school. Julius had left UMass in 1971, breaking his promise to Callie that he'd graduate. The decision had been necessary, but it haunted him for 39 years. Callie died in 1983, months after watching her son win an NBA championship. With her dying breath, she'd reminded Julius of his unfulfilled promise. "You said you'd graduate. I know you will." At 60 years old, Julius contacted UMass and asked what it would take to complete his degree. He needed 32 credits, approximately 1 year of full-time study. He moved into an apartment in Amherst, attended lectures with students young enough to be his grandchildren, studied late into the night. The kids were initially starstruck, but Julius insisted on being treated like any other student. "Call me Julius. I'm not here as a celebrity. I'm here as a student who needs to learn." The experience was humbling. Julius struggled with coursework, asked for help, sometimes failed tests. But he persisted, driven by the promise made 4 decades earlier. On May 21, 2010, 60-year-old Julius walked across the stage and received his bachelor's degree in leadership. The crowd of 20,000 gave him a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. "This degree means more to me than any MVP award or championship ring," Julius told the graduates. "Those honors came from my physical gifts. This degree came from dedication and keeping a promise. Mom, I know you're watching. I kept my word. Finally." Alexandra sent him a text. "Proud of you, Dad. Never too late to keep a promise." The elder statesman, Julius Erving, now in his 70s, has spent the last decade rebuilding his legacy through grace, wisdom, and honest reflection. He's a regular fixture at NBA events, treated with reverence by players who grew up watching his highlights. In 2014, the NBA named its annual ABA championship trophy the Julius Erving Trophy. When asked about his legacy, Julius is thoughtful and humble. "I hope people remember me as someone who changed how basketball is played. But more than that, I hope they remember me as someone who faced his failures with the same dignity he faced his successes." His relationship with his children, including Alexandra, has deepened. He's a grandfather now, watching his grandchildren grow up with opportunities he never had. "The dunks fade," he tells kids at youth programs. "The championships get forgotten. What matters is how you treat people, how you respond to adversity, whether you keep your promises." In 2021, Turquoise filed for divorce after 49 years of marriage. The split was reportedly amicable, the natural end of a relationship that had survived more stress than most marriages could bear. "Life is a series of chapters," Julius said. "Some are triumphant, some are tragic, some are complicated. You don't get to choose which chapters appear in your book. You only get to choose how you write them." What Julius Erving changed. Julius Erving's statistical legacy is complicated by the ABA-NBA split, but his combined numbers place him among the greatest. 30,026 points, 10,525 rebounds, 5,176 assists, 16 All-Star selections, 5 MVP awards, 3 championships. But statistics can't capture what he changed. Before Julius, basketball was played primarily below the rim. He proved it could be played above it. Before him, professional basketball struggled to capture mainstream attention. He made it must-see entertainment. Every dunk contest traces its lineage to Julius. Every player who hangs in the air an extra moment, who adjusts mid-flight, who makes basketball look like ballet, follows the path Julius pioneered. Michael Jordan credits Julius as his primary inspiration. Kobe Bryant studied his footage religiously. LeBron James calls him the original. "Doc didn't just play basketball," Jordan said at Julius's 1993 Hall of Fame induction. "He liberated it. He showed all of us that the game could be played in 3 dimensions, not 2. Every aerial move I ever made, I learned from watching him. He's the father of modern basketball." But Julius's real legacy might be how he handled life after basketball. The business failures, the personal scandals, the loss of his son, the revelation of his secret daughter, the bankruptcy, the divorce. Most athletes who face such trials retreat from public life, broken by their failures. Julius faced them head-on, admitted his mistakes, made amends where possible, kept moving forward with dignity and grace. In doing so, he showed something more valuable than any highlight: how to be human, flawed, struggling, but still striving toward something better. Today, Julius Erving is 74 as of 2024. He lives quietly, splitting time between Atlanta and Philadelphia. He remains active in the basketball community, serving as an advisor to the 76ers and appearing regularly at NBA events. His relationship with Alexandra continues to grow. She retired from tennis in 2010 and now works as a coach and commentator. They speak regularly, building the relationship that should have existed from the beginning. He's a grandfather to 8, who know him not as Dr. J, but simply as Grandpa. He exercises daily, maintaining the fitness that made him legendary, though the explosive jumps are gone. He plays golf regularly. "I can't fly anymore," he jokes, "but I can still create angles other people don't see. That's what golf is, finding a different way to get where you need to go, just like life." When young players ask for advice, he tells them, "Your career will end. Your athletic gifts will fade. Make sure you're building something that lasts longer than your ability to jump. Character matters more than championships. How you treat people matters more than how many points you score." The kid from the Roosevelt housing projects who learned to fly has come back to Earth. But what he created while airborne, the impossible shots, the revolutionary style, the blueprint for modern basketball, remains suspended in time, eternal, inspiring generations who never saw him play but understand what he meant. The sound of thunder. At the Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, there's a video installation showing Julius Erving's greatest moments. Visitors watch in awe, younger fans discovering for the first time what older fans always knew. Julius didn't just play basketball differently, he played it beautifully. Next to the video is a simple plaque with a quote from Julius, given in 2018 when he was 68. "People always want to talk about that shot against the Lakers, the one from behind the backboard. They want to know how I did it, what I was thinking, whether I knew it would go in. The truth is simpler than they imagine. I was trapped. No angle, no shot, no way forward, so I created one. That's what life teaches you. When there's no clear path, you make one. You stay in the air a little longer, you adjust mid-flight, you find beauty in impossible situations. That's not just basketball. That's how you live." Below the quote is the date, February 22nd, 2018, exactly 38 years after the shot that defined his career. Some gifts transcend the moment, some lessons float forever, some flights never truly end. Julius Erving proved that humans could fly. Then he proved something even more important, that what matters isn't how high you soar, but how gracefully you land when gravity finally wins. The doctor performed his final house call decades ago, but the prescription he left for creativity, dignity, resilience, and grace remains the treatment for every impossible situation we face. The shot lasted 1.4 seconds. The thunder still echoes.